WNST at Howard Bank. Tell you what, they have a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do, and each and every Thursday we get together and do the Be More Positive Community Series here, highlighting charities and highlighting community good works and good deeds. It's also brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing. If you've got someone to throw onto the list, throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. And spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of, well, Ravens, Orioles, Terps, Caps, all that good stuff. I also love to step outside the box and bring on authors. As an author myself, I love talking to other people that dedicate the months, the weeks, the years, in the overnights to writing and editing and doing all that. This is a new book on sports science, which is really, really cool. I love talking to folks that do these type of things and talk about how athletes into their late 30s, 40s, and maybe even 70s, 80s, and 90s, depending on what they're competing at, get better and stay healthier. The book is Play On, and I want to get the pronunciation right. Jeff Bercovici joins us here, the new science of elite performance at any age. You can check this out online as well as on his Twitter. When you're not writing books, you're the bureau chief at Inc. and at Forbes, but this seems to be something a little outside the box for you, Jeff, in writing a book where you took an idea and a concept and said, there's enough here, and I'm interested enough to want to write a book about this.
That's basically what happened. Yeah, I do. So at Inc. magazine, I cover technology and startups. So there are quite a few really interesting sports tech startups, fitness tech startups that I've written about, and some of which made it into the book. But yeah, this really grew out of my life as just kind of a really average, not particularly talented amateur athlete who loves soccer and tennis and staying fit. But as I was getting into my mid-30s, I was finding it increasingly hard, getting injured, had a couple of serious injuries, and I took a step back and said, I'm a big sports fan. I see what's happening in the world of sports where the biggest athletes in the world are increasingly either my age or older, and don't seem to be slowing down at all, whether that's Tom Brady or Roger Federer or Serena Williams or LeBron James. I said, what is going on? What are these people doing that is helping them put these demands on their body and hold up to it?
Well, I've been around athletes all my life. I'm 33 years now into my career as a journalist in Baltimore, 27 into radio. I've owned my company 20 years. I've got, partners that are in the industry. And I think there's some secrecy about a lot of this, and certainly on the Brady side. After Bonds and after Balco, I was in those locker rooms in the 90s when Mark McGuire had the Androstene Dione, and we're all trying to figure that out. And I guess I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, hearing my dad talk about the East Germans and the women with mustaches winning, swimming events and whatnot, and we saw the level of drugging and doping, and it was called doping, right? And then I've also, my wife's a two-time leukemia battler, has had her life saved twice, and I've seen what steroids do, good and bad, to keep people alive. They sort of had a scarlet letter from the baseball era 20, 30 years ago, as well as from the Olympic era throughout time, right? And our own athletes, U.S. Track and field team, doping. I don't know the difference between doping and steroids and what's legal and illegal and illicit, but anytime I see Tom Brady at 41 doing this, my stink eye is up. You know what I mean? I'm 50 years old, and I'm in the best shape of my life, and I know how hard it is for me to get on a hot yoga mat 3, 4, 5 times a week and go at it 60, 90 minutes, and I was never an elite athlete in anything, but I feel like at 50, I'm eating, whole grains and fresh stuff and, watching Dr. Oz and trying to separate what's fact and fiction, and I know you're probably in the same place from all the liners I've read about your book, which is separating the fact from the fiction is much like in the political space, or much like for your favorite football team when they're lying to you or whatever. It's trying to figure out where the good information and the bad information is, because you do see Tom Brady do this, and I think if you've been watching like I've been watching and you're 50 years old, your stink eye has to go up. It just does, What's he peeing,
Yeah, absolutely. You can't ignore doping. You can't ignore steroid use. It happens in every sport. As I say in the book, I do think that there are more clean athletes than dirty ones. And I definitely know from my reporting that there are athletes who, for whatever reason, not because they're necessarily saints, but maybe they have health reasons. I interviewed some athletes who were women who had had babies during their competitive careers, and they were saying, it's really annoying to have to compete with people are doping, because I'm just not going to put that in my body and risk having risk doing something to my unborn child. But I have to compete with people I know for a fact are doping.
Well, that was the Lance Armstrong story, right? I mean, that was the whole story there, is he was a saint kicking everybody's ass, and there's no way he could have ever done it. And it turned out, like much like baseball, it was so much more prevalent, right, than in a lot of these sports than maybe we've given credit for. And there still is a scarlet letter to wear if you get caught, right? If you ain't cheating, you're not trying. But if you're, if you're a female tennis player and you get caught, you wear the scarlet letter forever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my approach to this was, there are a lot of things that these athletes are doing, both legal and not legal, and both effective and ineffective, that we don't need to know about, because we're not going to do them anyway. I know for a fact that doing steroids works, and especially helps people who are older and might be having trouble holding on to some of that muscle. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't help your disposition. I'll assure you that. It's not going to help your mood.
Exactly. So my goal in this was to talk to a reader like me and say, I have a limited budget. I have a limited amount of time. I want to do the things that I know will work for me, and that I'm actually going to integrate into my life. And what are those? The other things are interesting to read about. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of high tech science stuff. A lot of medical stuff that it's definitely interesting to read about and know about. And the way that science works, in 5-10 years, it might be out there in the consumer market for all of us to use. But for now, I want those like big payoff things. What are some concrete changes I can make in my life that are definitely going to deliver results?
Jeff Bercovici joining us here. You can follow him out on his Twitter. It's Bercovici. The book is Play On, The New Science of Elite Performance at Any Age. And you have a swimmer on the front. You're on the air here in Baltimore, and we've seen what Michael Phelps has done and these sort of superhuman things that we've seen in pools. I swear he's sort of half dolphin at some point. And, and I think you think that about any of these. And we're in basketball season now, so LeBron's doing his thing, and we see all the hockey players and the kind of breathing they do and the strength they have and the quickness and all that. But on a weekend warrior level and on the science of good health for the rest of us, right? A couple of tips from you, and I would say that the first thing is we all do want to read Tom Brady's book and learn that he doesn't eat strawberries. And I know you had that in your liner notes as well, as far as weird stuff to do or not do, or what's a fad. Don't put things in microwaves. You read all of this stuff, and certainly after your wife's had cancer a couple times, it all sort of comes to your desk, and you always wonder about organic versus non-organic, and where our vegetables and where our meats and what our cows and our chickens and our fish are eating and ingesting before we eat them. But for just simple people listening here who love sports and are running out, a couple of thoughts that came to you in writing the book that maybe you didn't know about 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
I would say I definitely didn't know. I didn't know what's probably the biggest change in sports that had the most impact. I mean, this is probably the single biggest factor in that's extending some of these careers that would have been shorter 10, 15 years ago, is the way that athletes train with regard to fatigue. Basically, there's this saying that you hear now that fit is the new fresh, or fitness. You have to balance your fitness with your freshness. 20 years ago, the goal in a lot of sports for training an athlete was basically bigger, faster, stronger. You started seeing. I mean, you went from the 70s when most pro athletes looked kind of like normal people to around the turn of the century, they were these. In almost every sport, they were these giant, jacked up, super buff superheroes. But the thing is, it didn't necessarily translate into performance because fitness by itself, if you're fit but you're fatigued, you're not performing your best. And not only you're not performing your best, you're also at a higher risk for getting injured. So what you started seeing about 15 years ago, the San Antonio Spurs were one of the first teams to do this. They started experimenting with resting healthy players during the season. Nobody was doing it. It seemed like a crazy idea. Greg Popovich, the coach, he was getting fined by the league because they said, why are, fans are paying good money to see your stars. Why are you sitting your stars if they're healthy? But he thought that it would result in them playing better and getting fewer injuries. He was right. He won a bunch of championships with one of the oldest rosters in the league, and everyone looked at what was going on there and said, wow, they're doing something, this is clearly something that works. So now the new conventional wisdom is you have to be fresh. Freshness is as important as fitness, and that's why you see someone like Roger Federer at 36. He takes the clay season off because he knows I can't play all 4 Grand Slams a year and be fresh enough to win any of them. So you rest a little more, and that's how you extend a career.
Well, I guess we'd say the same thing about pitching, right? We went from 4-man rotations to 5-man rotations and pitch counts. And, there's sports science involved in every sport, right? And I guess you can be as casual a beer-drinking baseball fan sitting out in the outfield having a good time wearing your team's jersey, or you can be a sports science person, certainly on the baseball side of analytics, and know, bat speed and angle and how fast balls go out of state. I don't know how much that really helps what they're doing to some degree. I think there's a fascination, but everything's measured. I mean, I think it started for most of us when a Fitbit came out, right? Like something you could strap on that would measure how far you went, how fast you went, how well, like the old treadmills used to do, but it was that sort of a measurement device that we began around the turn of the century, and now it's on apps and whatnot. But you can be as scienced up without being a scientist, right? Like you literally can have anything strapped to you to give you some sort of a readout that you can measure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for the consumer athlete, I mean, also in the professional world, but for the consumer athlete, the quantified cell movement has it's made a huge difference. I'm not going to say for the time being it's necessarily for the better. I think a lot of us don't know what to do with all the data that we're getting, and for some people it might even be cause sort of information overload that makes you less likely to work out. But there are definitely if it's not making us better athletes now, I think it will be in the future. We're at the dawn of this data era. And we're just starting to figure out where it can really have beneficial impacts.
Well, it's also probably really good, especially for a guy like you writing a book like this, that the ESPNs of the world and the journalists that are still left in the world are kind of nerded up and interested in this. This is something that we talk about now, and even with sports psychology. I had a conversation earlier, certainly on the backside of the NFL draft, where every guy is getting measured in every single way, that fans do understand there's a whole lot going on here, and you can peel back that onion and learn more about the science of why someone gets drafted and someone else doesn't to some degree, right?
Yeah, I think that there's been a change in how we identify with athletes, and it's partly a result of the fact that the biggest stars they're so much more distanced from us than they used to be in terms of they're so much more protective of their image. They're much more, they control access much more, but on the other hand, we know so much more about them. We know so much more about the science behind their performance. We know more about what they're doing. I don't know what LeBron's really like in person, but I know a hell of a lot about how he treats his body and what he thinks makes a difference to his performance. And I think, fans, we sort of identify with them more on the level of wanting to emulate what they do than necessarily, wanting to get a beer with them.
Hey, man, appreciate the time and, appreciate all the effort you put in. How long on the book? I'm a guy that, has put in a couple hundred days here and again on a couple books myself. I have great appreciation for getting it done. But soup to nuts, when did the idea come about and when did you get it to fruition?
Oh, gosh, the idea was about 5 years ago.
Hey, man. Well, 5 years of making the baby. Congratulations on Play On. We'll spread the word here about the new science of elite performance at any age. Appreciate you taking some time to come on, Jeff.
Great talking to you.
You got it. Jeff Bercovici joining us here. You can follow him out on Twitter as well. He's also an editor at Inc., Inc., the publication. He's the San Francisco bureau chief there, covering technology and all sorts of cool stuff. So go find him out there. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox, free of charge, and powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's always $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. If you're getting our morning newspaper, you're also getting the Laurel entries for the weekend. I'm going to the Kentucky Derby this weekend at Laurel with my wife. We're going to get all duded up and, of course, get ready for the Preakness. We're considering this the pregame, as Stan Salter likes to say, for the biggest race of the year, which will be the Preakness Stakes 2 weeks from Saturday at Old Hilltop. The meet moves to Pimlico after the weekend. So you get all that out with the Maryland Jockey Club. We appreciate their partnership. They're on the front of our website at WNST.net, as well as in our morning newspaper each and every day. Don't forget, any breaking news happens first on our tech service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST is heard around here. The Baltimore Brigade are our partners. Well, I wear my Brigade hat here in the blue. They play an indoor brand of Arena Football League action. That's going to be happening on Friday night down at the Royal Farms Arena. Ron Jaworski's going to join us this week. His Philadelphia Soul will be taking on Ted Leonsis' Baltimore Brigade on Friday night down at the Royal Farms Arena. Learn more at the Monumental Sports website, Monumental Sports. Download the app, and you can watch the games as well at BaltimoreBrigade.com if you're looking for a roster to learn more about Randy Hippert slinging it. The Modell Lyric is also our partner. Jackson Brown on Thursday night. Don't forget, we're about 2 weeks out now on William Shatner coming to town with the Star Trek. He'll be taking Q&A and storytelling. The real William Shatner for every Trekkie out there. My wife and I were doing the Vulcan thing. I'm doing it right now on the Facebook Live thing. But that's down at the Modell Lyric, Modell-Lyric.com. And, of course, Steely Dan, no static at all. October 11th on the calendar, as well as Kansas in November. Modell-Lyric.com to learn more. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.